Live. I think we're live.
It says live.
Does it say live?
It says webinar is streaming live on Facebook. That's what I see.
That's what you see. All
That's what I
right.
see.
Well, if that's what you see, let me get us up here. If that's what you see, then that's what it is. And oh my goodness, let me hit record. And here we go. Well, I'm going to welcome everybody to this next segment of A Day of Light and Love 2019. And I have to, first of all, I just want to explain about what the event is for. And then we're going to welcome this just incredible woman who's going to share with us. Just we could probably sit here and talk to her for hours and it would feel like 10 minutes passed. But we are doing this event. We are collaborating and doing this event as a live stream that we stream every other hour for 24 hours. We started on Christmas Eve at 10 o'clock Eastern, and I think we're at like 3 something Eastern time now on Christmas Day. But we are really excited to serve those people who are being served by this. If you're called to be a part of this live stream, it's because we're supposed to serve you. And so the wisdom, the voices, the stories that are made available to everyone here, I'm humbled by the gathering of leaders who have offered to give their time. And Linda Ragsdale is an exceptional. She's just an exceptional person. I've just recently gotten to know her through a mutual friend. Her There's just a lot of accomplishments, a lot of accolades, and a lot of overcoming and becoming. And I'm not even sure how to put it sometimes into words, but in this segment, I'm truly honored to introduce you to Linda Ragsdale. And so, Linda, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. It's always embarrassing to hear things like that when you're sitting right there with
Mm,
someone. But thank you. I'm very excited to be a part of this. Anytime we can open up doors to bring more people into conversations and understand a different way, sometimes a different path, or just understand life is everything and comes in all forms and ways. And from every experience, we learn. Every single one.
well, that would sound just like really wonderful rhetoric if I didn't know the story behind the story, honestly. I do want to say that there's a couple of things that we're going to hopefully be able to talk about. But the very first thing, I think I'd like you to, if there's some annotated version, I don't know if that's possible, of your experience. You are the survivor of a very devastating terrorist attack. And if you could just maybe just explain a little bit about that experience, and we'll take the conversation from there.
Do you know, I think it's the annotated, right? The shorter version of it is that I am one of those people who knows what it's like to sit in the room where gunmen have come into your life space. During a dinner in Mumbai, India, the terrorists came in and shot through the room. I am one of those people who knows what it's like to wait for the gunman to come to your table. And, they were executing survivors. So I know what that is like, and I know what it is to sit there and wait and not understand what is and what you can do and the limitations. And here you face that moment of life and death, and you have to sort of, where are you on that? Because you are literally going to be facing a gunman within seconds. I was shot. The bullet traveled miraculously through me, almost 1/3 of my body. I had laid over a friend who was offside to the table because we couldn't get under the table, but it didn't matter because the gunman came around the corner. You know, this is your perception. You have no idea. You try to hide where you think you will be safe, and he walked around the table. You know, we had no other place to go. And then I awoke after being shot to see the devastation, the a room of war, the darkest side of humanity come to life, and to hear my first death breath, which was from a young 13-year-old girl who was dining with us next to us at our dinner table. And a part of you slips, right, goes. A part of your spirit leaves with that breath. And you know it, even though you have never heard it. And what it does is it imbues you with a sense of, what will you do with your life now? This knowledge, this balance, this intricate balance of what you know. And it literally, and you and I have talked about this, the one doorway I had to go through that ultimately asked the greatest question, which is, what will you take out of that room? And will you leave that room? You know, and for me,
Can I want to
yeah.
just, I did ask for the annotated version. I probably shouldn't have done that. But there was when we were conversing originally about this story, you were saying to me that you looked in the eyes of the person who shot you.
So, right, in those moments when you were laying down and I was waiting for this gunman to get to the table, I had in my head completely believed that I would not see a human form, because we were at dinner. And whenever any of you go out to dinner in the next, listen to the sounds, because that is life. There's the din, there's the clatter of dishes, there's the clanking of glasses, there's that errant laughter, that makes you look around the room because someone is, that is the symphony of life. And in that, someone was coming in, and we were not armed. We were not in war. We were not expecting this. And so I expected a monster to come into view. And what I did see was the barrel of the gun across this amazingly high polished column in the Tiffin restaurant in the Oberoi Hotel. And to see a young boy, right? To see this young boy, my heart was just torn. I just, as a mother who recognized her own son's face in the structure, right? Because it was a square jaw. I knew he was around 2021, just like my son at home. I knew the young girl at the table was the same age as my daughter at home. So here I was with this universal family and this young child. And to put this in the correct terms, I was gifted a vision, right? This child, not right, because that to me, why did this child come to speak to me with a gun? What had happened between this communication system that he wasn't seated at the table with us? There was room at the table to make room for so many more. Why wasn't he there with us? Because in my life, I would have been talking to him, because I worked with students. I was teaching kids how to own the artistry of their lives, teaching them how to draw with simple lines, things that they knew, and build and create things. And here was a child whose backpack was filled with ammunition, whose belt was filled with shrapnel, and whose experience was, right, to kill. And so my monster, right? And moments before I put my head down, it dawned on me that he was frightened. He was a child who held all the power in his hands, in his back. He held all this power, and he was frightened. And then I realized I was his monster. So in this world of words, two people are looking at each other as monsters. and we've never spoken a word. Never spoken a word. So how does this existence become created? How do we start to learn to open our tables up and bring more people to the table and hear his story? How did that child get to this place?
Yeah.
How did we get to the place where one person is holding a gun and the other person is at the other end of that gun?
And this
that
all is happening to you like in a split second, that realization, that epiphany.
I think all of it was absorbed in those seconds, right? Because in those seconds, that's what you see. And when you're coming through, right, and understanding what you've been through, that's where you sit there and you think, that was so, right? But I really did believe I was going to see something tentacled alien, straight out of something, because you couldn't be human, right? Your head and your heart could not be so separated in this life to be able to do that.
And yet you looked in the face of humanity.
And it was a child.
Wow.
Right. It was
you also spoke of exiting the restaurant. Like,
so we went through the initial barrage of all of the bullets that just, the amount of heat from the bullets that came to us. We couldn't even see each other from across the table because the air was bouncing so violently from the heat generated from these AK-47 bullets. And so then they came the second time, and then table to execute survivors. And when we had escaped, two young boys who should have run for their lives waited and called out to the restaurant and said, if you can come now. Two kids who should have run from that restaurant and left, saved our lives, called out to us. And there were five that, out of that whole room, there were five of us. But when we were sitting there in what we thought was safe, they started to blow up the foyer. And I never knew this, but the percussive strength of a bomb, even from a distance, is so violent that it threw me from against the wall into the middle of the room. And then we went out, and I always marvel at this because I do recall just the distance of a doorway. So anytime you walk through a doorway today, look at the distance of a doorway. Look at that distance. That's all it took for me to walk outside of Hades into heaven, to this beautiful, beautiful night. And it's so funny because yesterday morning when the sun rose, I woke up and it was this smile of a moon. It's that little sliver that just looks like this smile that's been stuck up into the sky, and twinkling stars, and looking at that and thinking, this is so beautiful. And I had to be forced into the cab. There were cab drivers who themselves should have not been there. But, when we walked through that door, we didn't know if we were going to be greeted by more gunmen, if this attack was full or whatever. So the chance of that, kicking through an alarm door and going out and finding this night that was made for lovers, and laying in the grass and looking at the awe of the universe. And the question becomes, which room will you stay in? You walk through that doorway and there are choices. You can live here in this room with this experience, or I offer you this heaven. But you must decide what you will carry out of that room, because you can't ignore your life experiences, because they do become the foundation. And if you don't watch out where your foundations are built, and this is some of the things that we do. What are the words that you will use that describe your experiences? Because those are vital, and it became really important for me to stop calling the word terrorist, because this was a young man. This was a young man. How he became a terrorist really could be something that had to do with us. So when we label something to create a distance or anything else, we have to remember, when we hear these experiences and they start calling, right? No, this is a human being. This is a human being whose life experience has taken them here, and why? Because until we start asking those questions, stop the names, start looking at everyone as human and understanding the spans of that from light to dark,
Yeah.
we can't learn how to keep living in that light space. So what will you take? There was so much hatred and misunderstanding that came out of the room that I had to take love and making right. The whole goal is to make the table big enough and to hear these stories. Come tell me, come sit with me at a meal. You will learn so much about people dining together, right? The spices that they like, the sweetness that they like, the layers of things, what it is. You will learn so much about a person, and also the family stories around the meals that they've had. The best meal I ever had was here and here and here. Oh my gosh, we went here and we had this, and it was the worst experience. These are the times where we really sit down and learn what excites and makes someone happy and thrilled, and what are the flavors and spices of this person's life. How have they tasted life? Right? And if everything they have tasted is bitter, and if they have not learned how to find the balance between all of that, then the words and the weight of those experiences will be how they describe their life. And so it was really important for me, in understanding what had just happened to my life of ignorant bliss, to have faced this real darkness was very important.
Out of this experience, you formed a project
Yeah.
called the Peace Dragon, which I just absolutely am captivated by that name. And then you explained to me where that came from, why you felt compelled to take that experience and move it forward in the ways that you have. Can you share a little bit about the Peace Dragon?
Yeah,
And
it's really quickly. It has become my life's work and my passion, and it is part of something I practice every day, 24/7. And I'll share a little experience about yesterday, which was very funny to me. But I started the Peace Dragon because earlier in the day, the young girl Naomi Scher, who was under the table with me, she reminded me of my daughter. I had missed my daughter, so we were sharing experiences. She'd never been in a swimming pool. I had always aspired to be Esther Williams, who a lot of people may not know, but she was a movie star who did all those grand swimming numbers and everything. And like I said, I grew up in a pool. I had done swimming and diving, and also done an entire routine on a surfboard in front of a group of people. Right? It's right. Storytelling. It was probably one of the craziest things I've ever done. But in this, she'd asked me earlier in that day to draw a dragon. And like all things, we expect tomorrow to come. And for her, it didn't come. For us, that opportunity never arose. So to honor her last request, I started teaching children how to draw peace dragons. And they are drawn empty-handed. And the artist needs to look around and see what gift their peace dragon will bring. And we forget, I do this with as early as kids as pre-K4 and adults. And let me tell you, even our littles know what this world needs. They know, they see hungry people. They see people that need food or water, or they hear things. They see this world with such an innocent and love, but they just know that there can be more joy. But then you also have the artist look inside, and I'll ask them, tell me what you love to do. How many of you love to dance? How many of you love to cook? How many of you love to eat, right? All of these things are part of what your dragon can bring to this world, because it connects our internal passions to the external, and it becomes almost those seeds of service that somewhere that child will remember what it is they see and what it is they do. And those are the solutions. What my gifts are creates the balance to this external world that I live in. And it's important. So I started drawing dragons, and up to this date, I stopped counting, but over 65,000 drawings. I've traveled all over the world. Through that became the tenets of teaching peace, which is view, voice, and choice, which is see yourself with love, see the world with love, speak to yourself with love, speak to the world with love, and make choices from a calm and centered heart. And part of that is because when you look at your heart, the point of it is right where you're standing. Mm-hmm. That's where you are. But if your heart is, I always laugh with kids, if your heart is upside down, it becomes like a rocket, right? So you're off kilter, your heart's completely flipped up upside down, like your heart compass, and it goes right up and you can become hot-headed. Mm-hmm. So as a dragon being a symbol, we always talk about the need for that fire, but that tempered fire, so that it brings light to darkness. It warms cold hearts, and it becomes the way to cook a meal, to create that table seating, and says, tell me your story. Tell me your story. So it is a way to get children to tell the story of themselves, of the world around them, all through creating, which is a powerful experience because we create our own experience. And when we learn to create it in a way that helps us find the treasure in every moment and learn to turn the trash away, and drawing's a great experience. Mm-hmm. You don't like the way that looks? Turn the page, start again, take the lines that you like from the page before and use them and create new lines where you want to. But there's no reason for you to keep scribbling over a drawing like that. You have to remember, turn the page.
Fabulous.
So sometimes fabulous. The lesson we learn. We do a great peace exercise where we have everyone talk about what is peace and love, and then we talk about what is war. And then there are groups of people, and they have to draw peace, right? So they're, we've talked about these images. So it's happy people and everything else. Then we trade groups, and they draw war over someone else's peace. Mm. And then we hand them back. They go back to their original drawing, and they have to draw peace again. Mm. So what used to be these lovely right? You see these pictures and the color choices that people use for peace and love, the color choices that people use, right? So when you're talking about understanding after war has happened in a place, and a person comes back to the space that they have created, and it is completely unrecognizable. How do we build that? And have we learned how to turn the page? And no one, except I think one person, asked me, can we turn the paper over? Because they wanted to start something new and fresh. And that's the whole idea. Because there are a lot of things that stain when something like a war or something like a fight happens. Until we learn to turn the page, until we learn to communicate and take that page and make sure that there's no little stain that remains there or anything, or to learn to make that stain into something that is beautiful. Because the flip side of that is I teach how to take a scribble and make it into something amazing. So it is learning to create the solutions that work. How do we turn the page? How do we make it into something that becomes beautiful and does not stain? How do we create the language that starts our lives? Mm.
Well, we're going to fast forward now in your life, because this is work that you've been pursuing for over a decade.
Well, we just passed the 11th anniversary of the shooting. Yes. So.
And most recently, earlier this year, you experienced the passing of your husband of several decades, almost.
Yeah, 27 years.
Yes. And there are people that are either going to watch the replay of this, or they're tuning in now, and they're experiencing the first Christmas, either without a loved one. Before we came on, you were talking about a friend who has experienced the death of a marriage, you experienced the death of a spouse this year, right? You were talking about, the grief and the process of grief and how similar. I mean, grief is grief. I remember my former, once a mother-in-law, always a mother-in-law, but I had a marriage earlier in my life, and my former husband's stepmother and I had just a very marvelous relationship. We just had a wonderful relationship. And she had been widowed before she was married to my former husband's father. And so she was widowed. It was sudden, it was a airplane crash, and her
Oh,
husband was gone, right? And I remember I'm going through the this is what I was thinking of earlier when we were talking. I was going through the death of a marriage, and never really realized that's what it was, because you just hear the word divorce, right? Which to me is sort of like disconnection,
right?
cauterize the ends, boom, right? But truly, she said something that I've shared with others in the process of helping them move through, what you're going to talk about here with the grief. And she said to me, in many ways, divorce is harder than the sudden death of a spouse, because it's a living death.
Right.
And I mean, and I never really looked at divorce as, I didn't really look at the end of a marriage as a death, or any relationship really, as a death. But it's true. It has the very same emotions, has the same, it's just the energy is very similar. So I say all that to ask you, there are people that are viewing this or are on now who could benefit from hearing your experience, and because of the wisdom that I mean, clearly you bring a tremendous amount of wisdom and discernment, um, just in the way that you've alchemized, yeah, an experience that most people would stay frozen in, I would venture to say,
Well, and
Um,
it comes down again to this understanding of the words that we apply to our lives. So the word cancer, I am literally coming upon my 5-year survival of the word cancer, and I had stage 3 breast, and had to have the double mastectomy,
okay,
and
so the
after Mumbai,
after your recovery,
right? And
uh,
traveling all over and getting the Peace Dragon on it, getting its wings going, and really just so excited for the year ahead for me to take off. I had my yearly exam, and lo and behold. And once again, we're at that doorway. We're at that understanding of, well, just yesterday, right? I was working 8 to 12 hours in Japan. I didn't fly home and catch cancer on the airplane home and then have this test. I had cancer while working 8 to 12 hours. And this is the day that I find out I have cancer. So, no cancer, oblivious, cancer. And that word is one of those words that we have learned to fear, right? It is
mhm.
a word that we have used that polarizes people, and it separates us. So you're talking about the severing, right, of a relationship in a divorce. It severs us from keeping ourselves whole to be able to understand and go through what we have to go through. So by understanding that cancer is simply knowledge, right? The news that I got from the doctor was simply knowledge. It was not bad news.
Mhm.
It was simply news. So when we start these adjectives and we start to put descriptors into our lives, we can weight the way that we will travel through it. So it is very important that you understand. So the same thing, I had to go home and absorb this and understand, you didn't know this word yesterday, but you had it.
Yes.
So what are you going to let it change? Because if this puts you in bed, it makes no sense, because I've let a word completely changed my life and how I respond to it. Instead of taking that word as knowledge, as power. And knowledge, and this is one of the things you and I talked about, it doesn't make you fearless, right? You don't become fearless. Fear is a wonderful thing that has been given to us innately through our system to understand when we are in danger. It makes you fear less. And therefore, that knowledge that I had cancer allowed me to look at a doctor and have them give me their prescribed way, but also say, that's not for my body. I can't, right? That's not for me. So I argued with my doctors and I did not follow some of the traditional paths of it, because when I argued, I found out more information, and my team of doctors actually agreed with me when I went after. So when radiation came and I kept asking questions, I have 2 titanium plates that were in my neck from previous, I'm so scarred. I have lots of scars, but I have 2 titanium plates in my neck. So if you're going to radiate me so close, will that stay within the titanium and will I get overdosed? Well, we don't know. Okay, that's not good enough for me, because we know radiation can cause cancer. So perhaps then the best avenue for me is to opt to not do that and do that. So we went through all of these things. I didn't do the tamoxifen because when I questioned the tests, they found out that my genetic makeup did not qualify me for that. So it allowed me to also question. So we have to learn to question, because questioning and becoming powerful within knowledge of our own selves and our own path makes us fear less. It keeps us in that seat of power. If you allow fear to take your life over at any time, someone else will take hold of your life and lead you down that path. And it may be not where you want to go. So
you moved through
So we went through, I threw a big, huge party. I posted pictures. I had it set when I lost my hair, that I would post pictures of my hairdresser was ready with the next party, and my kids were there when I had a dragon cut on my head. And then I talked about the stories of being bald and how the first time I passed a mirror, I didn't recognize myself and screamed out loud and thought it was Mr. Clean that broke into my house. And my mom would have laughed because she's never called me, the clean queen ever. But, so there were things that I thought were comical that would change that experience for women. I never wore a wig. It was not out of the boldness of that statement, because it was so uncomfortable. And I posted the photograph of my bald head and I said, look, this is me trying to live.
Oh.
The same catheters that I had, but otherwise we, right, all are trying to live. And when we start to have those conversations, and that's exactly what it did. Women would come up to me and say, I know this experience. I had that haircut. I had that, right? And so it allows people to talk openly. It allows us to walk amongst one another and recognize. And yes, there was a young girl who turned away, and we can't fault. We don't know. Did she lose someone just recently? Was she just recently diagnosed? Has she not been around, right? Is there an inability? But the more we learn to have the conversations, the more we learn to talk, the less power words have over us, like cancer. So when cancer entered our world again in my husband's, there were several incredible things that we learned. Of course, we are all different, so every path is different. And my husband looked at me and just said, I was trying everything I knew to try and lift his spirits, and because he was terminal from the beginning. So, which is an incredibly, I won't go through my understanding of why that is wrong to date somebody. I had spoken all the time after I had been given cancer to literally talk to other women and mentoring other women and going through this. But I had learned that all the tools that I had for me were not his tools. So my toolbox for my husband was empty. So how do I find his tools? How do I get him to share with me his tools? Because right now, the medical community has said to him, You have a clock that's ticking like a bomb, and we don't know when it's going to go off. But we can tell you that it will be, and their descriptors of his death were horrific. And the only promise they could give him was that we will try and keep you out of pain, which is inexplicable weight to throw on someone. And he didn't know how to take that word and learn to live. And so it was 2 years of traveling through and understanding, right? Because I was going to, and our word is lose. I was going to lose this guy, you know, out of all the men on this planet. And that's when the word appeared. Out of all the men on this planet, I was given this guy. I was given the experience of Mumbai. I was given the experience of cancer. And before that, I was given, you know, I traveled through years of lupus and MS. And, you know, as a child, I had gone through a windshield in a car accident and bruised my brain and lost my math department and, you know, my ability, my drawing ability, which was tragic for me at 16. But, you know, I'd lost a friend to suicide. Right? I was given those experiences because each one of those experiences gave me a treasure, a gold, a gem. So I did not lose my husband. I was given this man for 27 years. And if you can have a beautiful death, for hours, I played our music, our songs, you know, decades of the music that were, when he would travel, he would call up and play songs for me over the phone. And so I played those songs and I sat there and was with him. And when I started to sing, I tease everyone, I had the worst voice ever. And he took a sigh and he left this planet. And it's like he was thinking, oh my gosh, after 27 years, I'm so over this. I'm going where the angels sing. But the idea was I was given this man and he left with a sigh. Your heart is this incredible thing. And this is what I teach about. The whole symbol of peace that I use is a heart with dots around it. And each of those dots is the experiences. If we let one of those experiences get too big in our life, it freezes our heart, right? It tucks it against all those other dots and it becomes looking like a petri dish rather than this very distinctly beautiful ring with the freedom of your heart to move and feel all of these emotions, feel everything you need to feel, and then go with the emotion that helps you move through the experience. And so I learned to not use the word, right? Lost. I lost no, he passed, but I was given. And so your heart has this ability to hold on to whatever you want it to. So if you choose hate, greed, envy, you know, all of those things, you will hold on to the toxicity. But a heart is supposed to be this free passing thing. These experiences go through your heart. These experiences go in for you to find the gem and then leave. And that gem is either for you or for you to hand on to a friend. But your heart will grow as big as you allow it. And it will always hold on to the things that you let it hold on to. So I'll never lose my husband. I'll never lose it. You know, he will always be here. And trust me, you know, I cry freely. I think I went through the cheese department for the first time without crying yesterday, you know, because you let those tears fall. Those are real. Those are, you know, and I am so thrilled to have had those tears to cry over. There are some people who don't have that kind of love that they could say. We used to call and, you know, honey, let's do a nashi dinner. What kind of cheese do you want? Do you want the blue cheese this time? Or, you know, that brie that sort of buttery melts in your mouth, you know, that those are the things that I have those tears to shed because I was given so much. Given. Given. What shall we write? The words that we use. Fear less. I fear less because I take what I know and I bring it in there. What are the words? When I was laughing when someone described my day, my life, you know, it's like, oh my, I went to a wedding of a a woman who was 75 years old, first time married, was a Mumbai survivor.
Wow.
And someone had written to her, you need to read Linda's Facebook page. You know, she's had this, this extraordinarily tragic life. It's like, or extraordinary experiences. And I was like, put extraordinary life, because that's what it is. It is not, I don't feel like I've had tragedies. I just feel like I've had experiences, and each one of them a gift given.
Mm.
Each one of them a gift. And we can't take back what happens in our lives. We can't address the things that fall in, but we can certainly learn the language to enrich our lives, to give us the way to tell our story that empowers others to go through the same thing. So if you are going through sitting at a table and there is an empty chair, that empty chair is filled with so much of what you are given. Celebrate that chair. Put that chair, put pictures in that chair. Let everyone fill that chair with the stories that make you laugh, that make you cry, that make you think about it. We do things a little. We took the box of ashes and we put this turkey hat on him, and we laid out an outline of where he snored and slept on the floor. And, we played this. So my kids are old enough, but if you stepped on dad while he was napping, you had a drink. And, we enjoyed the part of what we remembered the most about some of these celebrations. And today, he would be snapping pictures incessantly, to the point where everyone was like, Dad, stop it, right? Because he'd get up and he'd do this. But right, that was the way he captured life. And he would flip through those pictures. And especially towards the end, those pictures were his lifeline. They were his life in this reflection. I think that I will miss, right, that clicking, except for the fact I already have it.
You already have it.
Right? I have 1,000 pictures in my heart.
You were given it.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Craziest, goofiest man in the whole world.
I have loved this conversation. And we are at the end, and I have loved this conversation. And we will have others, because you have so much to share. There's just so much. These annotations have just barely scratched the scratch of the scratch, as they say. And I so appreciate your giving. I do. I really appreciate it. And
well, thank you for creating the space to have these stories come out, right? Thank you for giving everyone the ability to sit at a table, right? This virtual community is a huge table that we need to keep inviting more people to.
Absolutely. Thank you for giving it those words.
Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this.
Well, we're gonna end the live stream now. Linda, don't run away. We're gonna end this live stream now, and I know everyone who's participated either in viewing or you've been live. I know that you're feeling it as well. So thank you so much, Linda. Thank you.